Welcome to Dungeon Academics. My name is Thomas and I will be your instructor. My current online Dungeons & Dragons game is going really nicely. We've recently hit level 5. I've got another session of the game this evening that I'm really looking forward to. I've got a great DM who's telling an interesting and original story in a compelling way. And I've got a group of players that I like playing with. It's pretty much everything you could ask for in an online game of Dungeons & Dragons. I am happy. The Dungeon Master has said that in retrospect he wished he'd started the campaign using the 2024 version of the rules. We started with the 2014 versions because that's what he was more familiar with and that's the resources that he had access to. Now, I haven't actually played the 2024 version of Dungeons & Dragons yet. I've spoken often about it. I've read through the majority of the rules, and I like the direction that it's taken in most cases, with a few notable examples like Great Weapon Fighting and Great Weapon Master, but I made videos about those already. What the Dungeon Master is suggesting is that we bring in some of the rules into the campaign. So, for example, the weapon mastery rules. I think most of the players seem to like that. It's a nice little buff for the people who are playing martial characters, whereas it doesn't really affect the non-martial characters much. It would also give some bonuses to the enemies that we're fighting against that will make combat a bit more exciting. And I like this idea. I like the idea of taking the bits that you like from the 2024 version and bringing them into 2014 in the same way that I think it's perfectly acceptable, in fact preferable, to take the bits that you prefer from the 2014 version and bring them into the 2024 version. I, for example, don't like the idea of tying your ability score bonuses to your background. I much prefer it to be a free choice, like from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. The original version in 2014 had it tied to your race or species. The new version has it tied to your background. The intermediate version had it as free choice. And I prefer that. And I think a lot of Dungeon Masters will still allow you to do that. Anyway, we are going to be bringing in the weapon masteries. And I've been looking through the list. And one thing that bothers me somewhat about the weapon masteries is that despite being a good idea, it's only offering players a meta choice rather than a game choice. A meta choice is a choice about how you set up your character. You pick a weapon that you have the mastery of and you get that ability, and that's something you can now use. But it's not giving your players additional choices as they play. It's a choice about how you set up your character, not how you use your character in the moment. When you gain one ability, you gain the ability to do one thing. If you gain the ability to do two things but can only use them one at a time, you now have a choice with every action you make. Do you use option A or option B? If those options are well balanced, the choice that you make will depend on the circumstances that you're in. Sometimes you'll do option A, sometimes you'll do option B. Working out which one to use is fun. Games are about choices. And I've made so many videos about choices because that's the thing that I think Dungeons & Dragons should have more of. Not meta choices. Choices about what equipment you're going to take or what abilities you're going to take. But in-game choices. Should I do option A or should I do option B with my character? That's really what I want to see. And I've talked about my own view on weapon masteries and how I would change it. I would set it up so that you learned multiple weapon masteries. Each weapon had different weapon masteries attached to it. But you only get to use one per attack. So now you're having to pick from a list of options, which one do I use in each circumstance? For me, the very core of role-playing games is agency and effectiveness. The agency part is, do I have choices that will affect the game? And the effectiveness part is, are my choices going to have a noticeable effect on the game? If I give you a list of 20 options that you can pick from every time you take an action, but none of them really do anything significant, you have lots of agency but no effect. And that can be frustrating. And I've seen that happen with less experienced players, where they have so many different choices or abilities to choose from, and they get frustrated because the ones they pick don't seem to do anything. The classic example is ranger players who have all these wonderful options, and it's so rare they get to use some of them. And when they do, they're not very effective. It's like, why am I playing a ranger? And unfortunately, I think that's partially down to problems with the character design. And it's the responsibility of the dungeon master to try and engineer situations where those abilities are going to be useful. And that's not always possible. So you need to give your players choices about what they can do in the game, and you need to make sure that those choices are all going to be effective in some way, because players want to have choices and players want those choices to be impactful. I know some Dungeons & Dragons players who just want to hit things and do damage, and any other part of the game they're not interested in. And if that's how you want to play Dungeons & Dragons, that's okay. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with that. It's perhaps not the way that I would want to play Dungeons & Dragons, but it doesn't mean that we both can't have fun playing the same game, perhaps even playing at the same table. The game is flexible enough to give people different levels of enjoyment in different situations within the game. But for me, and a lot of the more experienced role players that I've played with, they want the game mechanic to give them more in-game choices, not meta choices. And they want to be able to see the impact of the choices they make. They want their choice to have a meaningful change to the game. Now, the change from 2014 to 2024, as I said, was a step in the right direction, but I don't think it focuses enough on these in-game changes. So all these suggestions that I'm making in these multitude of videos, they're all about changing the balance from meta choice to in-game choice. Now, I hope that as Dungeons & Dragons 2024 gets more supplements and more options, that this balance will somehow be restored. There are lots of things that I really like about the 2014 version that haven't been included in the 2024 version yet. One of my most favourite subclasses, yes, let's go with that. One of my preferred subclasses is the Bladesinger Wizard, simply because the ability to make an attack and cast a cantrip gives you so much flexibility and so much choice in what you do. You're doing two different things with your action, and I love that. Now, that class hasn't officially come out yet. Has it been included in Unearthed Arcana? I think perhaps that was worth looking up for me. But I'd want to play a character that had an ability like that. I was theory crafting how I could play a fun character, and it ended up being a multi-class soup of paladin and sorcerer and warlock, just to get a set of abilities that I think would be fun to play. And I'm not convinced. The idea would be the sorcerer lets you cast Booming Blade as a bonus action, and the paladin lets you attack as an action. So using Quicken Spell for the sorcerer, so you could do a couple of attacks in your melee turn as a paladin, and then burn a couple of sorcery points and do a bonus action cantrip, perhaps Booming Blade. I love Booming Blade. And then the Warlock would allow you to attack using Charisma and give you some extra spell slots every short rest that would allow you to keep your sorcery points up for being a sorcerer, because 2 sorcery points to cast a cantrip as a bonus action is a lot of points to spend. It wasn't really working out yet. I'm sure at some point in the not too distant future, I'm going to play in a 2024 campaign, and I'll find a character that I love. I'll find a character that gives me choices and it gives me effectiveness that I enjoy. I don't know if it's there yet. I enjoy watching theory crafting videos from a whole range of different creators. Shout out to Colby with D4, he's always fun to listen to. And all the suggested characters that he's made so far haven't quite hit the mark for me, because they're focusing on effectiveness without focusing on choices. The way he designs characters is brilliant, but it's prioritizing one thing above everything else. And that's not how I play. I would willingly be less effective if I had more agency, and by more agency I mean more choices to choose from in different circumstances. That's just my personal philosophy on the game. Now, whether something more appealing to me will come out in the near future or not, I don't know. I'm always looking out for new rules, new supplements to the game. I want to fully invest in the 2024 version, but that will only happen when it becomes the game that I want it to be, or close enough, and it's not there yet. But I'm sure it will be there. And if I was responsible for designing the next version of Dungeons & Dragons, obviously this would be something that I include baked into every class right from the beginning. Is that what you want as well? I'd love to hear your opinion on this. Is 2024 the game that you want it to be? Or is there something missing? And is the thing that's missing in any way compatible with the vision that I'm having? I've talked a lot about how I want to change the game, but I'd love to hear how you want the game to change, and whether you think any of my ideas are actually worth implementing. It'd be fascinating to see that. Anyway, that's it from me today. Enjoy your next game, whatever it may be.